Welcome, friends, to Apodcast.com. I'm Adrian Sinclair, and today my guest is Mike Blasi. He's a returning guest. He was a guest host on one of the episodes, but today he's going to be guest.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me back in the other seat this time.
So we had a wonderful conversation last time. Some stuff that we talked about, food and dieting and working out, and shared my journey in that respect. And today we're going to be talking about your journey. So today's episode is going to be talking about food and just how do we deal with changing our lives, and your journey, how you changed yours, how you changed the way you eat, and what kind of impact that had on you. And then we're going to branch off from that. So
yeah, I'm excited to share this journey and hopefully inspire someone else like you inspired me.
Well, thank you. And you inspired me in return, because we're sharing information, and that's what this podcast is all about, right? It's about listening and learning from others, and then sharing that information. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about your journey, and I'm hoping to learn something new from you as well. Last time we talked about how what I did with intermittent fasting inspired you to do that, to try that, and you had some phenomenal results with that. And then you tried other things, and like carnivore diet, which inspired me in turn, and I tried that, and that worked for me. So I guess it's your turn now. So
all right,
the ball is in your court.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of want to start this journey way back to when I was a kid, right? So, I had a typical childhood as far as diet goes, typical standard American diet, a lot of processed foods, and
Right.
I remember I was always active as a kid, and so I remember coming home and always drinking the Kool-Aid, right? It was like that was my drink back then when I was a kid, just the sugary Kool-Aids, and but I kind of had a good, healthy experience as well. We lived with my grandfather for a few years, and he had a pretty good-sized garden out in his backyard. And he was actually a chef in the Army, so he knew how to cook good food. And we'd go out and we'd pick the corn off the cob, shuck it, and put it in there and eat it. So it was good stuff, right?
Right.
We'd do the same with green beans, and he had some fresh tomatoes, and he'd make cucumbers and pickle them. So I had a lot of good experiences with kind of local homegrown food, but also the typical, McDonald's and processed foods, sugary cereals in the morning with cartoons, and all
Right.
the cookies and all that other crap as well.
Breakfast, the most important meal of the day. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on that. So, yeah, it's definitely something that the Kellogg's Food Company, I think, started because they wanted to sell more cereal. And it's probably the worst meal of the day, actually. I think the best time to eat during the day is kind of midday. So you extend your fast from sleeping, and then you give your body some time to digest before you go to bed. That seems to be the best time.
Let's get back to your story. I didn't want to
Yeah.
sidetrack you with that.
Yeah, no worries. So
typical
typical,
upbringing.
as far as diet with a little bit more healthy foods. But I was always outside. I was always active, right? So I played a lot of sports as a kid. Never had a problem with my weight. I was pretty tall for my age, so the kids in class would always pick me for kickball and dodgeball and all that stuff. So pretty athletic growing up. And I continued that through high school and even into college. So I played a little bit of club baseball in college. We didn't have a NCAA team. It had actually been dismantled the year before I came. But that kind of worked out because I got to, definitely be on the team then. I didn't have to try out or anything. So stayed in good shape for college, for most of college. And then I got a job in corporate America, and that's kind of where things went bad. So
How so?
we had a cafeteria for one thing, right? So I'd never been in an environment where I was working where we had a cafeteria there. So that was kind of bad because then I could go and get food as much as I wanted. At 2 o'clock, they had the cookies, the fresh cookies, and so you could smell them, and it was hard to resist those chocolate chip cookies.
I can relate to that. I used to work at Citi Bank in New York, and they had Gosh, what was the brand? They had a little bakery that was literally
Oh
in
man.
yeah. Uh, gosh,
Dangerous. Yeah.
I forget the name, and it doesn't really matter. But bottom line is they were making those cookies, and that smell was just going up the elevator shaft and just
Hmm.
going all the way up. So your brain is already primed that
Yeah.
you already know. Like you walk in the morning and you already know that at lunchtime you're going over there to
Right.
get those
Right.
cookies, right? You're already registered, and so that was terrible. That's the easiest way to gain weight when you have easy access to food, right?
Yeah, and especially when you're in an office setting and you're sitting at the computer all day, right? You want to get up and do something, and that's something easy to do, right? And then get that sugar high to kind of help you get through the day, at least for the next half hour until you get the sugar crash, and then it goes downhill.
Right. Easy excuse when you have that midday lull, typically where you just like, oh, I just need some energy. So what are you
Yeah.
gonna do? You're just gonna hit up some carbs and and off you go.
Yeah, and that's really gone away with my new lifestyle and eating once a day and fasting most of the day. So that's really been a good benefit. But back to the story. So this was in 2011 when I went into corporate America. But the good thing, and I want to include this because it comes back later. But I was going through some depression, and I finally went to a counselor because I had good health insurance being in a corporate America. So I'm like, oh well, they'll pay for it. I guess I'll go now.
Right.
And the counselor, she said, I usually don't recommend drugs like for people when they first come in, but you've been going through this for so long, I think you should talk to your doctor. So I talked to my doctor. We did the whole antidepressant experiment, and you got to kind of go through a couple, 3 months and find the right one that works the best with the least side effects. But the reason I bring this up is because that's kind of when my weight gain started. And that's pretty typical once you get on an antidepressant. That's one of the side effects. So I kind of like to blame that, but it was a combination of things, right? It was the drugs, and it was being in that cafeteria setting and just having access to food all the time and going through that. So over the next, so I want to start, we were actually a healthcare company that I was working for. So they did a little kind of when you first start your employment, they do like your
Yeah,
testing.
like a physical or
Yeah, so they did a physical and they measured my body fat, and I was at like 15% body fat. So I was in
wow,
probably the
that's
best shape
yeah.
that I've been in my life. And I was just under 200 pounds, about 195, 15% body fat, and I'm 6'0", so that's pretty good. And so that was my baseline starting. And over the next couple years, I got up, I gained about 60 pounds.
Wow.
And so I like to blame it on the drugs, but it wasn't always the drug. And then eventually I reached the height of 282. So I'd gained, over 80 pounds. And I kept that weight on for several years until you inspired me. So what really inspired me though before I learned about you and your fasting was I'd gone in to my doctor, and he recommended this book called Complete Guide to Fasting by Jason Fung.
Mm.
And so I went and talked to you about it, and I said, well, you've been doing this fasting, and you said, yeah, read this book, Complete Guide to Fasting by Jason Fung. I'm like, huh, there must be something to this. I got two people saying the same thing here. And I'd also done some blood work, and I got really scared because my fasting glucose was at 100, which isn't too bad really, but it's on the lowest end of the pre-diabetic. It's like 100 to 130 is pre-diabetic. Right. And that really scared me because I know people who are diabetic, and I've had some in my family, and I said, no, I don't want anything that goes with that, insulin shots and all that stuff.
So that was a turning point.
That was a turning point. So, and that was about the same time that all this stuff came together with the fasting and Jason Fung. And my A1C was also similar. It was like in the high fives, so it was borderline pre-diabetic, right?
And for those who don't know, what is A1C?
So the A1C is your 3-month blood sugar average, basically. So it kind of gives you more than just one night fasting glucose. So it's usually a little more reliable for your blood sugar
a better
levels.
Marker to go by.
Right. So that inspired me, along with the fasting. It all kind of came together, and I said, it's time for me to make a change. And you had just told me about your 5-day fast, and I was like, how'd you do a 5? That just blew my mind. Like, how does someone fast for 5 days?
Aren't you gonna
Like,
die?
yeah, aren't you dead? Like, I'd never heard of that before, honestly. And so that really inspired me. And I was like, well, if you can do 5 days, I can do one day and see how it works. And I'd actually fasted before in kind of a religious sense, once a month or once every 2 months. And so I was familiar with doing that. But I was on so many carbs and sugar that after about 12 hours, I'd get those carb headaches, sugar headaches, and I just had to stop. Like I
The
couldn't.
keto flu.
Yeah, I couldn't do it back when I first, before meeting you and finding out this stuff. So that first week, I was like, okay, I'm going to cut out the sugar. I'm going to cut out the processed foods. I'm just going to eat whole foods, and I'm going to skip breakfast. So I started out 2 meals a day, right? I'm going to do lunch and dinner. I'm not going to do any snacks in between and just do breakfast. I'm just going to drink water. I'm not going to drink any soda. I did still drink a little bit of milk because that was kind of my go-to drink. I never had a problem with sodas. It was like milk and lemonade once in a while. But I did that my first week. I think I lost almost 15 pounds. And I was like,
It's amazing.
wow. Like, I was not expecting that at all. And, I found out later that a lot of that is your water from your liver.
Right,
and
right.
So, yeah, I want to preface that. So even before, a couple years before that, I've been diagnosed with fatty liver and also with sleep apnea. And so I've been going through that. So that was another motivator along with this blood test. Like, well, I need to get these things cleared up.
Right.
And a lot of the doctors that I hear on this podcast, they say that their fatty liver patients, they actually clear that up within like 2 weeks. It's amazing.
That is amazing.
It's
You,
just
you
like,
give your body what it needs, or take away the stuff that it doesn't need.
right.
Right? Or both.
Yeah.
So give it good stuff and take away bad stuff, and your body is a wonderful mechanism of healing itself. And just talking to more and more guests on this show, and we're going to have Catherine Threkel, who's naturopathic doctor, and we were talking about, and we're going to have her again on this show. Like she was talking about how all these different aspects, how body can heal itself if you give it the right stuff, which is,
Right.
it's not new, but like she's doing it, and she had patients that are like just tremendous turnaround in terms of the effects of how you simply just change your diet. Of course, there's external factors as well, which we have to acknowledge. It's food that you put in your body and bad stuff that you don't put in your body. That's one aspect. And then the stress environment, when you're stressed, what happens when we're stressed? You eat.
Yep.
Yeah, you got that comfort food, right? You're like, all right, I'm just gonna open up a can and eat large, right? I'm just
Get the
gonna
bonbons.
Yeah, that's right. Get a Cinnabon and a gallon of ice cream, and I'm happy, right? And until the next day, and you're a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, the body will take care of itself, and it seems like those things that are old are becoming new again, right? Instead of pushing these pills and doctors writing prescriptions for everything, we're kind of rediscovering those things that our ancestors used to do, right? Like fasting, right?
Right.
And there's no money in fasting. That's why it's not advertised very well, right? So I love what Dr. Fung and Megan Ramos are doing, and all these other low carb fasting doctors. So back to the fatty liver. So what happens is when you start fasting, that's actually the first place where your body gets its energy, right? Is from your liver. So you've got this temporary storage of energy, and that's what you use when you sleep, basically. So you're storing this temporary fat or energy in your liver, and that's why you survive when you're fasting when you sleep, right? And so that'll last maybe 12 hours or so. And then after that, that's when you start burning your fat cells, and you get into that gluconeogenesis, I believe is what's called. And so if you prolong your fast over 12 hours and you're not eating sugar, then your body starts getting fat adapted. And once I understood that, and reading Jason Fung's book explains that very well, once you understand that that's how you can access your fat cells, then your life can really change. And my doctor had never said anything about this. When I was diagnosed with fatty liver, he's like, yeah, you need to, I bring like a salad with some protein on it and lunch and stuff. And that's about all the advice I got, right?
Really?
It's like, well, can you give me anything else? Like,
I can give you some pills.
Yeah, yeah, they could do that. But it just goes to show that these doctors really, they don't have a big education in nutrition, right? They're taught to have 5 minutes with the patient. There's so many patients they have to see. They look at the chart and say, okay, we can give you this pill, and here you go, instead of the lifestyle stuff.
And that is so true that, and I talked to several like medical doctors, MDs, about how much nutritional training they get, and it's literally nominal. It's just a little box that they check, and it's like, all right, yeah, done. I know enough.
It's like maybe a 1 day thing, yeah.
Right? And it's not a lot, and that's why. But I think there is shift in even among doctors. They want to educate themselves more now beyond what the medical school is giving to them, because they see that the market is shifting too. People are I think by podcasts like these and just overall just communication on the internet, and people are seeing that there are better results, that you can achieve better results through different things, different ways than getting a pill from a doctor or some kind of a magical formula. And so I think that's why even medical community is slowly shifting and expanding, and working with nutritionists to help out. But even they will give you like this, I eat several times a day,
right.
and
it's outdated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad results with it and things like that.
So when you read Dr. Fung's book about fasting, what were some of the things that kind of really spoke to you about fasting itself as a sort of process of kickstarting your company to do the right stuff?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it was mainly just understanding how to access your fat cells. It's just a basic thing, right? Like you don't eat, and your body is amazing. That's why you have this fat.
Yeah, and, I call it survival muscle.
Yeah, it's a survival muscle. Yeah, it's a survival energy, right?
Yeah.
It's like going. Dr. Fung explains it like this, right? The liver, the energy in your liver is like your small refrigerator, right? So you've got enough to get through maybe part of the day, and once that refrigerator is empty, then where do you go? You go to the freezer, right? It's the deep freeze, right? So you go to your deep freeze, and that's your fat that's all around. So you might have this huge deep freeze that you can access a lot of calories from for several days. And so I really like that analogy that, you got the small fridge that you can store it in your liver, and then once that's used up, then you can go to the deep freeze. And I think that's the key that people need to understand, is that, you can't access those fat cells if you're eating every 2 hours. And that's the problem, because when you're eating, then your body uses that energy, and you're never going to get to your stored energy.
That's right. So I love that analogy. I think it's perfect in more than one respect. One is that easy access from like the glycogen and stuff that's in your sugar, in your liver and in your bloodstream. But once that gets depleted and you need to access your fat, well, what happens when you go into your deep freezer and get all those solid frozen solid steaks? Well, it takes time for them to thaw, and then time to cook in order to actually get that, right? So, and the same thing happens in your body, is my understanding. The machinery to start burning your fat, it has to kind of ramp up as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that transition between depleting the glycogen and that immediate food energy source, and then transition into like start burning fat, there is a off ramp and on ramp. So there's like a lull, and we'll talk about that as well. When you're doing like an extended water fast, what happens like on day 3 when you're like you have no glycogen, you have no carbs to lean on to get that energy, and your body's like, all right, we got to dip into that fat, and then that transition is a little bit tricky for people.
Yeah, that first week or two, going from high sugar, high carb diet to basically none, and getting your fat and whole foods, that can be pretty rough. And it was a little rough for me. I got through it. I just committed to it up front, and I think that's the key. You got to commit to it up front instead of. So there's different opinions about this. You can be like, okay, I'm cutting out sugar, carbs, going cold turkey, from the beginning. And then some people are like, well, you can kind of ramp it up and do this. For me, I'm like, I got to go for it. And that's what I did.
Really?
And
Just
that
cold
worked out.
turkey?
I'm just like, yeah, I'm cutting out carbs, processed foods, and then focusing on the whole foods and doing that. So I did that, and I just kept doing it. And after, it didn't take long, maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks. I was like, I'm not really hungry at lunchtime. I kept pushing my lunch back. So it used to be like 11, and then it was 12, and then it kept going like 1, and eventually it got to like 2. And I'm like, well, I'm like an hour from leaving work here. I'll just keep going. I'm gonna go work out. I don't really want to eat right before I work out, and so that's what happened. So that's kind of the regimen I'm on now. Is I eat typically during the weekday. It's at night because I'm at work all day. But on the weekends, sometimes a little earlier, like 2 or 3 o'clock, and so it's usually one meal a day during the week. Sometimes on the weekends, if I'm out with the kids, it'll be 2 meals. I'll eat some lunch with them and then get some dinner. But yeah, back to my story. So the weight just kept coming out off, and it was like averaging about like a pound a day. I was just blown away. I didn't think I would lose that much weight that fast. And so the first 11 weeks, I lost 55 pounds. And I wish I would have done a DEXA scan like at the beginning.
So tell the audience what DEXA scan is for those who don't know what it is.
Yeah, so I kind of found out about a DEXA scan probably about 4 to 6 weeks in. And a DEXA scan it's this machine that you just it's like a table, you lay on it. It's got this robotic arm that goes over you, kind of like an MRI, except it's not enclosed, just an arm, and it goes a lot faster. It only takes about 10 minutes. But what it does is it was originally made to measure your bone density for osteoporosis and that type of thing, which it does as well.
Does.
But there was a secondary purpose for it, and it also tracks how much body fat you have and where it's at. So you get this, picture of your whole body, and it'll say, well, you have this much fat in your abdomen, you have this much in your leg, your left arm, your right arm, and that type of thing. So you can use it as a baseline to see, okay, and it also calculates your weight, which is pretty amazing. So it shows you your weight, your body fat percentage total, and then your lean muscle mass percentage, and it gives you the pounds in each of your sections of your body. So it's really a cool thing to do if you're starting out. Get one right away, because then you got a baseline to see how far you've gone, and you can also see that you've actually lost fat instead of muscle.
Right. I was really impressed by it. I did it, and just to give you such a comprehensive report. I think it was like 8 pages.
Yeah.
Of everything from your bone density, but also like muscle and fat, everything that you said, and you see this color printout that shows everything where your fat is, and it's an amazing tool to give you that baseline.
Yeah. So I think I was like maybe 250, 260 pounds when I first got mine. So I was like halfway between my journey, and then I got one later when I was about 225. And what was cool was, even between that point and my kind of where I'm at now, you could see that I'd gained 5 pounds of muscle. And that actually happened kind of after I transitioned from the omnivore spinach salads with protein on top to mostly animal-based carnivore stuff. So that's where I basically lost 10 pounds of fat switching to carnivore, and then I gained 5 pounds of muscle. So it was a net loss of 5, and I would have never known that if I hadn't got the DEXA scan. So
exactly. I mean, that's why that kind of diagnostic tool or metric tool, measurement tool is great, because people go by, most of the time it's the easiest, right? It's just by weight.
Scale,
you step on a scale, and there's just so many other variables, right? Like people have different bone density, they have, and then you don't know, like, what did you lose? You know, like it's water, right? It's fat, but also like muscle. So what did you lose? What did you gain
Right.
during it? So it's a great tool to kind of gauge where you are at.
Yeah, and especially for women, because they seem to not lose as much as fast as men, and so they get a little discouraged at first. But my wife, she got on board with this a little bit, and she's lost 20 pounds out of it. But even more importantly, she's lost a lot of inches around her waist and torso. So I think that can be a good indicator as well. So
Right.
yeah, do you have that picture, Zach? You can
Zach,
pull
if you
up?
can show Mike before and after, there you have it, folks.
Yeah, so this is me on the left is in February of 19, 282 pounds up there. And then in June, these are actually my motorcycle pants here, and I'm showing you how much room is in there. I could probably fit a small child. I think I lost about 8 inches there. So yeah, they're really
Amazing.
big now. So
Amazing.
it's been a transformative journey for sure.
How much effort was it for you to switch your diet, your habits, because it's mainly habits that we have to contend with, right? It's so
Yeah.
we have these tendencies, whether we're stressed or just go to foods that we are accustomed to, and switching to a different food source. How was that for you?
So yeah, the first thing that I kind of went to instead of the carbs or the processed stuff is berries. So kind of low carb berries, raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, and I really liked milk. I still drink. Actually, it's more sour cream now. I can't even drink milk; it's too sweet. Which is one thing I learned is that milk actually has a lot of sugar in it. It's made to transform a baby cow into a full-grown cow in very short time. So
Right.
think about what it does to us. It's touted as a healthy food, and it's got a lot of sugar in it. But anyway, back to that. So I would have berries with heavy cream. So I'd have some heavy cream and berries on that. And then I used to use the monk fruit, kind of
Sweetener.
the good sweetener that's more natural than some of these artificial
Hmm.
ones. So that was kind of my go-to dessert at the time.
I really liked yogurt and blueberries. There was this time that was my thing to go to, and then I added some monk fruit as a substitute to kind of sweeten it a little bit. But I started making my own yogurt from
Hmm.
getting raw milk from a local farm over here, from farmers that I know personally, and high quality food. And I bought a starter kit to start making my own yogurt. And it was so easy to do. You just add it in, and it just makes yogurt. And then you just add more milk, and it makes more yogurt.
Makes more
It's like
yogurt,
a
yeah.
magic hat trick. It just happens. You just add on. It just goes on forever. And so that, and then blueberries, and sometimes I was slicing some avocado into it. And I love that. I had a phase when that was my daily thing. I loved it. And because yogurt, when that bacteria processes milk, it processes a lot of that
It
sugar,
eats all the
eats
sugar
up
out,
all the
right? Yeah.
sugar,
So
so
you're
you don't
not
have
eating.
that. So you do have just fat and protein in that yogurt. And it's a probiotic, and it's healthy for your gut. I mean, all just our ancestors, and I know we talked about that in the
Yeah.
past, our ancestors ate so much more of fermented
Fermented
foods,
foods, yeah.
which are good for your your biome microbiome.
Yeah, and that's really what I keep going back to. I've read tons of books, probably 30 books in the last year. It's crazy. I probably read more health books than I did studying, for a computer engineering degree, and in 7 years I had a master's. But so it kind of shows how passionate I am and dividing, trying to find out as much information as I
Right.
can. But the one thing that I keep going back to is, our ancestral diet, right? You can read study after study, and you can get an argument for vegetarian versus carnivore, all these different things, low carb versus low fat, all this stuff. But really, we've talked about this as well. You got to experiment on yourself And then for me, it's like, well, let's look back. We never had these problems with the diabetes and obesity, even as little as 100 years ago, right? So we've got people who have written things down and talked about diet and what they've eaten and all this stuff. So let's go back and look at what they ate. And maybe, we think we're so smart in this technological age and scientific studies everywhere. But those people knew how to eat and not get fat, right? So that's what I always keep going back to. And it's the whole foods. It's, we never had access to plants and vegetables year round. So I think that's a real good argument. If you have a plant and vegetable diet and it's working for you, stick with it. That's great. It helped, I was eating spinach salads with avocados, these healthy fats, with eggs on top, with some meat on top, and all these things. And so the spinach, I think, really helped kind of fill me up, even though maybe it was just fiber. When I transitioned to an animal base, which was just kind of natural, really, it was like, well, I really don't want as much spinach anymore. Oh, these tomatoes, like, I can smell the vine, which is really interesting when you go through this conversion, how your smells and taste really change. Like, they've changed so much, and I think they still keep changing, right? You just listen to your body and see what happens. But what I was getting to is, for me personally, looking at your digestion, right? You remember the movie Jurassic Park,
Right.
Right, that first part of the movie, and they were trying to diagnose what the dinosaur was sick with. Well, what did they do? Scientists went right to her poop.
Right.
What is she eating?
Yeah.
What's going on with her poop,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's kind of funny to talk about poop, but look at your poop. Like, are you having good regular poops? Are you having explosive poops? Not solid, too solid, whatever. So
There was a book about poop, literally just illustrated poop, and I forget the title of it, but it's really all about poop, where you can tell, like, fiber, not enough fiber, this fiber or that, or colors and all of that. And it just cracked me up because it was, but yeah, it is it's what comes out. And then if you analyze, you will know what's happening in your system. So it is a diagnostic tool as well.
Yeah, and I found when I started reducing the vegetables and things, like, my digestion was perfect. I didn't have the bloating. I was real regular. Didn't have any problems. And the other thing is, it wasn't as often, which to me says, okay, my body really likes this meat, right? It's using all this meat. I might not have had a bowel movement for a couple days, and I was fine. It was like, wow, this is weird, but it's cool because my body's using these nutrients, I guess, because they're not coming out. And, you look at some of these plant-based things that you eat, like corn, right? It can come out whole and your bowel movements and things. It's like, your body's not using that.
Right.
So just use some common sense.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, fiber is, first of all, not digestible by our system. So it's a bulk, it's a filler, it absorbs water, right? So the argument for that, eat more fiber, was always that it will just ease your pooping thing, because the stool is just filled with all these fibers, and it's just, but at the same time, it's making your gut not work as hard, and because it's just so easy for the system to expel all of that, right?
Yeah, there's a little transition period when you reduce the fiber, because your body's not used to pushing out the poop, is what it comes down to. So, yeah.
Okay, enough about poop.
Enough about poop. All right.
Let's talk more about poop.
Yeah.
So what else?
Yeah, let's go back. So, I lost all the weight, but what really shocked me, and kind of the secondary effect that probably it was more important than the weight loss anyway, was just the mental clarity. And when you're fasting most of the day, like, you can just focus, like, you're spot on. You don't have those mid-morning cravings. You don't have to have that sugar. You don't have that post-lunch, snooze. And so that was just amazing. I'd never experienced that before. Just be able to go through, your whole work day and be able to concentrate and feel alert the whole day.
That is amazing, especially when you do a water fast. And I've done it many times now, and I know how when you're switching from burning carbs as fuel and you're transitioning into burning fat as fuel, the product of that as energy source is ketones, which is so good for your brain. And you literally can feel that. And, someone can tell you how it feels, and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But if you experience it yourself, that's why when we talked about it, I told you, like, Mike, it's like you're gonna feel amazingly sharp because your brain is like consuming this jet fuel now instead of like just this regular, uh, you know, low energy gas, and so it's an amazing feeling for me, especially when I did water fasts after that day 3 when my body transitioned into full on just burning fat. It's amazing. It's like a natural high. You're just so focused, everything just like clear, and your body's just like it feels like you're burning that fuel, and you're just more efficient. Everything is just working so much better. So for me, that's, if nothing else, and if nothing else, that alone is worth doing these fasts once in a while. And some doctors, like Dr. Pampa over here in Park City, he's talking about doing a 5-day fast every month. And you get that benefit of what he's saying is you're getting not only the benefit of maybe losing some weight, which is not everyone needs that.
Right, right.
So let's be clear about that. It's fasting is not only for to lose weight, but apparently based on his research and scientific research, the your body starts producing stem cells to fix things. And it kind of makes sense. And the way he described it that really resonated with me was, he says, like, once your digestive system shuts down because it now transitioned into burning fat straight from your fat cells, your immune system, your whole body has like all these extra cycles to do stuff, right? So now it does like a house cleaning, right? This is like spring cleaning for your body, where a process called autophagy happens, which is essentially like vacuuming your system, your body, from dead cells or broken cells or damaged DNA cells which didn't replicate properly for whatever reason. And your body basically just cleans that up, and then your body is just more efficient. It's kind of like cleaning your engine with one of those, those things that you
Those
add,
engine
fuel
cleaners,
additives
yeah.
that you add in, just cleans the pistons and all of that from any gunk or residue. And that's what happens when you're doing fasting. So you have the stem cells that fix, ailing body parts, broken things in your body. Then you have the ketones, which are feeding your brain, so you feel super sharp. And then you have autophagy, which is cleaning up your body. And one of my friends who I talked to about water fasting, he did a 39-day water
Oh,
fast.
wow.
39 days.
Yeah, that's
And
about like Jesus, right?
yeah, yeah. And it was just amazing. I spoke with him, and I said, like, because I very much encouraged him, and just amazing transformation. And he had plenty of survival muscle to
A
burn
big
through.
deep
Yeah,
freeze, yeah.
yeah, big deep freeze. Yeah, but I was checking on him once in a while, like, how are you feeling? Listen to your body, and stop when your body says, okay, I think I had enough, right? But every single time he just felt, of course, there was this period when he had this like lower energy as his body was getting adapted to burning fat on and on and on. So he had that, but then as it adapted to new levels of energy coming from a different source, he said, like, the clarity, the focus, the just mental, the mood stability, all of that was just so almost addictive, in a sense, that when he was ready to end it, he was ready to end it like earlier. And he was like, no, I just want to go on because I just
Yeah.
feel so great.
I
And I'm
know how
like,
good
yeah,
this is, yeah.
at some point you have to stop and obviously replenish. And what's important when you get in, it's important to know how to get in a water fast, and it's also important how to get out of
How
it,
to get out, yeah.
especially the extended one.
Yeah, someday I'll do some extended fasting like you. The kind of the longest I've done is I can do a 36 hour pretty easy, but when I hit that 40 hour mark, I'm not hungry. I just, I kind of get a little nauseous and headaches. So I probably need to figure out my electrolyte levels. That's usually what it is. So I'll have to get some tips from you later on that. So, but yeah, back to your fasting comment and the clarity. Even our ancestors. So there's a lot of Greek philosophers and that some of them wouldn't let their students come to their classes unless they were fasting. So it's real interesting. Like,
It is.
yeah, it's like if you've been eating, don't come to my class because you're not gonna absorb what I'm teaching. It's like, wow, that's this stuff's been around for thousands of years. It's not anything new.
It makes sense. A lot of it, what spoke to me, especially Jason Fung's book and his YouTube videos, and when he's talking about how our ancestors just didn't have access to this food the way we do.
Right.
They didn't have like a fridge that can go in and eat like 6 times a day, and it was when they caught something, when they found something, when they killed something and ate, it was feast and famine. It was that kind of cycle, and that's how our bodies evolved. That when there's no food, that's why we have these fat pockets that's your energy, that's your storage of that, so you're not going to die. But now the system is all out of whack when we have this constant access to food, and food that's like processed to make it tasty with all these additives that they add, makes it addictively tasty, so people can't like stop. Just like eating Pringles. I remember it's just so. And I was actually watching a show about how like what kind of engineering goes into food processing. Like they literally like they even measure like the tensile strength of every.
Oh, yeah, they have scientists in these food companies that know what they're doing, right? So
and they have all these specific chemicals in it as a seasoning for specifically like chips and that you can't stop. Your brain is like, I want more. I don't know why, but I want more. And it's not because there's some really awesome nutrition in it. It's because of that concoction of different stimulants and in a sense of like tastes that just kind of get you hooked on. It's like you can't your hand just automatically just goes in and you.
So yeah, a couple of things come to mind from that. So Dr. Robert Lustig, he has a book called Hacking the American Mind, and that's what it's about. It's about the food companies developing all these processed things and how it tricks our brain into our reward centers and kind of our primal instincts of survival. Really, we were made to seek out calories, and the food companies are using that against us now. Like we have all this access to food, and they're using this. And Dr. Tro also talks. You can have fat or sugar, but when you combine them, it's like a light goes off on our brain, and it's just like, wow, we can't get enough, right? When you combine these two things together, and all these food companies know this stuff. And so let's go back that, and even maybe even 200 years ago, we were out there farming, and maybe we didn't have breakfast. We were out helping with the cattle and the livestock, and we were out farming. So we were doing intermittent fasting not very long ago. I mean,
yeah, it was a probably natural state of your daily business where you had to take care of things you didn't have. Like, all right, well, let's have 3 meals a day, 3 square meals, and
let's go out to McDonald's,
and then snacking in between.
Yeah,
that's even if not worse, it's at the same level that as like having these multiple meals. And the way some doctors out there describe is like every single time when you put food in your mouth, your system has to like spin up to get ready to digest it and process and all that, and that takes energy, and that takes away from other things that are happening in your body. And so when you do that almost constantly, like your system is just kind of like spin up, shut down, spin up, shut down, spin up, shut down, and it's just not energy efficient. It's not good for your system. I think Dr. Fung was talking about like credits. It's almost like you have a certain amount of credits per day to do digestion and all that. And if you spend them on the spin up and shut down, spin up and shut down, you're running out, and then your system is just not as efficient. So then you can't even absorb stuff that you ingested.
Yeah, and I think I've heard, there's only about a teaspoon of blood floating around your body at one time, so that's all that you can do. And when you ingest more than that, then your insulin spikes up, and insulin's job is to take that blood sugar and store it in your liver. And if your liver's full of, glycogen because you've been eating all the time, then it turns it into fat.
Right.
And Dr. Fung has really revolutionized this, and we'd love to have you on the show, Dr.
Yes.
Fung.
Please come and join us.
Yes. But he, went against the status quo and everything that we've been taught about nutrition and diabetes and all that stuff. And he said, it's not the food, it's the frequency of eating and the insulin. It's the insulin that's the key, because when you're eating, your insulin ramps up, stores that, makes your blood sugar go down, stores it into fat. And then if you're eating the next couple hours, well, your insulin goes up again. And eventually, because you're using so much insulin, your body says, well, we need more insulin. You become insulin resistant, and that's what leads to diabetes, and why people with diabetes actually have to keep increasing their insulin levels over the years, which is really sad.
Wow. So how are you doing right now in terms of, with all that knowledge and losing weight and the experiences that you've had? What are let's say, the top 3 tips that you would give someone who's like totally new to this?
Man, so I think number 1 is to cut out the.
You can go all the way to 5.
Okay, yeah. So number 1 is cut out the processed foods, right? You got to get rid of that processed stuff. So, when I first started, I didn't think that grains were that bad, but now I've done a lot of research. There's been a lot of doctors talking about this as well, that grains, especially processed grains that are in pretty much anything processed, that they're just as bad, if not worse, than the sugar, right? So our bodies aren't made to digest these grains, and our bodies turn them to sugar, just like regular sugar. So I'd say get rid of the processed foods. That's the first thing. I didn't have a problem with like sodas or drinks like that, but that would be in that category as well. So a lot of people have that problem. There's those sweetened drops you can use for water to kind of transition into that if you still need a drink that's sweet. So there's options out there that have the stevia or the monk fruit. Number 2, skip breakfast. It's easy, right? So if you can't skip breakfast, at least move it.
Yeah.
So move it. So if you normally have breakfast at 7, 8 o'clock, move it to 10 or 11. So, So
you keep on pushing it back.
Yeah, keep pushing it back.
Even the word breakfast, right? It's break fast.
Break your fast.
So literally, the meal that you're eating is you can have breakfast in the afternoon, because if that's your first meal, you broke your fast in the afternoon. That's your breakfast.
Yeah, I typically have breakfast about 6 o'clock at night. That's usually when I eat. And I eat eggs most of the time too. I eat eggs and steak, or eggs and some other kind of meat, ground beef or ground lamb or something. So yeah, that would be my second thing is skip breakfast. A third thing is cut out your snacks. Just eat during your meals and commit to it. You really have to commit to it, right? It starts in the brain, just like everything. It starts with a goal. Like, you have to see yourself. And I had been there before. I'd been at 15% body fat, so I was like, I know that I can do this. It's just a matter of, do I want to commit to it, and do I want to give up these things that I think are good, these processed things. So yeah, skip the snacks. So that would be, I guess, top 3 is those 3.
Let me tell you a funny story, because I'm terrible with the snacking, especially now post holidays when everything is just upset by the holidays, where you got family, you got basically everything just goes out the window in terms, like, there's cooking, there's baking, there's all sorts of good food that's just, it's hard to resist. And so I'm getting back to my normal, which is, no carbs, and getting back on my carnivore diet. And I literally have to lock any kind of things away.
Like with an actual lock?
With an actual lock. So my wife has a key. We have this cupboard, and I said, honey, whether it's pretzels or whatever that I don't want to eat, just hide it, lock it, so I don't have access. If you want to have access to it, you can open up that cupboard and have it. I literally had, before that, I was going to reward myself with some cheat food every week, and so I had this time box so I literally put the key to the cupboard in this time box, like one of those you can set, open up in a week, and it will have like a little countdown, and then it would open up, and,
love it,
and I would get the key and open up the cupboard and binge on something. But I don't even do that anymore, because once I'm back on my intermittent fasting and eating meat and fat and lots of it, I don't have cravings, and that's the beauty of it.
I know people don't understand this, right? Like, how can you not eat the donuts that your coworkers bring in? And Dr. Tro says this too. We'd love to have you on too, Dr. Tro. But when people bring this stuff into the office, it's like you don't even want it.
Right.
Like, you're just like that. It's not appealing anymore. And I never thought that I'd be at that level either. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I still eat the dark chocolate. So my desserts now are mainly cheese, like some nice cheeses. I'll have some nice cheeses. And dark chocolate. So I still eat the dark chocolate, usually around 70% dark.
Well, there's worse things.
Yeah, there's a lot worse. I took it downhill on Christmas week and went out and bought a cheesecake from Costco, and cheesecake is something I still love too. So I had like a slice every day, so that wasn't good. But
and let me be clear, it's not that you will forever not eat any of these delicious things.
Yeah.
It's that I think it's about forming habits and patterns of eating. That's what's destructive. Like, if you're gonna have, even if you binge eat something, get to the point that you're gonna get sick, if you do it once in a while, that's a whole your body will be able to recover from that,
right,
as long as your habits don't change and you don't do that as a sort of go-to or ritual. Like I used to have these almost like rituals where you're like, oh yeah, this is the day I'm going to have this and that, or this is the time of day and I'm always having this. And so as long as it's not habit forming when you go back into it, then you're going to be fine. So once in a while when you do a cheat day, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to give up the birthday cake on the birthday,
Right,
or the ice cream. I still have ice cream once in a while. My daughter just had her birthday and things like that. So you don't have to give those things up, and that's the beauty of fasting, right? You have that, and you're like, well, I'm just not going to eat the next day, and then those calories are
right,
like a wash.
You got it, yeah. And then you got a credit.
Yeah, that's what's beautiful about fasting.
When I was doing that, I remember when I told you about, like, oh yeah, I'm doing water fast, and this is like day 6 or 7. You're like, what?
Yeah.
And of course, this was the time.
What are you eating?
Yeah, what are you
You're
eating?
lying.
I literally, people bringing in donuts to the office, almost like taunting me with like, oh yeah, you're gonna dive right into these, and when your body transitions. And this is hard to understand for a lot of people that haven't experienced it, but I speak from firsthand and experience, and lots of other people who do water fasting. When your body transitions into burning your body fat, it literally has no interest in eating anything else, because it's just like, hey, I'm already in this mode of burning fat. I don't need to dive into like something sugary really quick, because my energy is just coming. It's just coming into the system. It's just being processed, and you don't have those cravings. I literally could smell the donuts. I can put it up to my nose, and I was fine. I had there was no voice in my head saying like, oh, just a bite. Oh, that would be so good. Like, versus before, I would just like, just
it's
open
funny,
it.
It's funny you say that, because Halloween this year, right? I was like, I really don't want to give out candy. Like, this is terrible. I'm going to give out beef jerky or something. But
Carrots.
So my kids come home with all this candy, and I'm like, well, I used to like this candy, so I'll try it. I took it, but I had to spit it out. Like, that's how much you change. You get these sugary candies. I can't even eat them anymore. I put them in my mouth, and I have to spit them out. And it's funny, because during this time, actually before this, I'm like, well, I'm going to try a banana again. I take a bite of banana. I'm just like, that is so sweet. I have to spit it out. And I can't even eat strawberries anymore. That's how sweet they are to me. So it's crazy.
Especially the real organic strawberries, the real stuff.
Yeah.
The ones that, like, I don't know.
We genetically engineer
those
so
huge,
big.
those gigantic strawberries. Like, I bought a box. Like, wow, they look just so appealing and everything, and they're just massive. They're just huge. And you take a bite, and it's like, Did I just buy? Am I eating cardboard?
Yeah.
What is this? It has like almost no taste.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, we've got these recommendations from the dietary guidelines. We've got fruits and vegetables having, 5 to, I don't know what it is, 8 servings a day or whatever. And, there's a lot of doctors now saying why. Why do we have these guidelines, right? So, fruit, people like the argument, right, that fruit sugar is different than sugar. Well, where does sugar come from? It comes from plant.
Right.
It's like it comes from sugar cane or beets, sugar.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They're both sugar, right? So obviously, instead of a fruit juice, which might take 8 apples or something to get that amount of juice or sugar, an apple is going to be a better choice. But you're still getting a lot of sugar with these fruits that we've genetically engineered to be bigger, sweeter, everything. It's interesting. One of the things I've heard is that they can't feed monkeys these bananas that we eat because they're too sweet.
Really?
So in the zoo, they have to actually get these bananas from South America, where they're native from, because the monkeys won't eat the sweetened bananas.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that.
So that shows you how much we've changed the produce.
Right. Well, so 2 comments that I have. One is like drinking orange juice or apple juice, which is it's like your body is it just goes straight in, versus eating an apple where you have all that fiber, in which case that fiber is very beneficial because it slows down absorption of that sugar. So you don't get this huge spike in. But again, it's like this classic American breakfast where you have, you got your eggs and bacon and a glass of orange juice, right? Like every commercial that you've ever seen in your life, where family sits down and it gets stack of pancakes and you got this,
or your cereal, sugary cereal,
right, and a glass of orange juice. And boy, that orange, like, just, I don't know, like, if you've seen like one of those machines that make that squeeze actually orange juice out of oranges. You know how many oranges you need to squeeze, in order to get a glass of oranges? It's just, it's insane. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
There's no way we would have eaten that amount of oranges in the wild, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we wouldn't have had access to that.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Don't be deceived that fruit juice is better than soda. I mean, it's got the same amount of sugar, right? So a glass of Coke and a glass of orange juice. What do diabetics do when their blood sugar's low? They drink orange juice, right?
Right.
So.
Well, I'll give it to the orange juice, at least for the vitamins. You do have vitamin C and stuff, which soda doesn't, unless they put some extra in there or something. But yeah, soda would be the first thing that I would diss. I haven't had soda in decades.
Yeah, I can't even drink it now.
Yeah,
I used to like some ginger ale once in a while, like especially when I was on a plane flight, and like I can't even drink that fizzy stuff anymore.
Interesting story about ginger ale. Let me take you on that little sidetrack over here. So it said, someone told us, or we read it somewhere, and was advised that pregnant women should be drinking ginger ale or something that has ginger for like nausea, and it's supposed to be helping out. And so I went on a mission when my wife was pregnant, on a mission to find the best source of like legit ginger ale.
Okay, yeah.
Ginger ale as a brand, ginger ale doesn't have like it barely has.
It's not even ginger.
It's
right?
not even ginger, or has very minimal. It's like it's almost like. It's like a footnote in the ingredient list. It's like it's a sugar water, carbonated sugar water, and then like with like flavoring of like ginger or something. So it doesn't have any ginger.
Not the same at all.
And that really shocked me, because I thought like, oh well, ginger ale, which back in the past was ginger based, right? They you went to some back in the.
So yeah, I've actually got a story about that as well. So when we were in Japan, we went to this restaurant and they actually had homemade ginger ale. So we're like, okay, we're going to try this. Well, what it was, so ginger is very common in Japan. They use it, the slices of ginger. If you ever get sushi,
right,
it usually has
that's
it
to
on
cleanse your palate.
But yeah, it's a palate cleanser, right? So they had what they had was this like carbonated sparkling water, and then they had like real ginger in it. And there was, I don't even know there was any sugar in it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, this is totally different than what I was expecting, but it's refreshing as well.
Friends of ours do that as well. They literally have a water vessel, and they just add some lemon and ginger, and it just kind of infuses it at its own little pace, and that's what they drink. And And that's how you get ginger ale, like
Yeah,
legit
real stuff.
the real stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll actually help you.
Mm-hmm. So it's January, and I wanted to set up a little challenge
Okay.
for like the next 3 weeks to do something. I want to get back in shape. I want to get back on the horse in terms of eating solid and getting back in shape, losing some pounds after Christmas, after holidays, and so I'm going to start water fasting. I'm going to start. I'm already on it. I'm already doing like intermittent fasting and getting back into eating more meat. And I depleted all my carb cheat food in the house. So like this is just going to be that. So I want to propose a challenge, 3 weeks or so, to start doing this, and maybe every week we can record a podcast and talk about our experiences and what we've done and what we've coped with, and I'm hoping to shed good 10 pounds, and I think this is going to be a easy peasy thing to do. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I still got about 15 pounds I'd really like to lose, and I found I've gained probably 5 pounds since the weather got cold. So I don't know if that's a biological thing that my body's saying we got to store up for the winter or whatever, because my diet really hasn't changed, or maybe it's just I haven't been outside as active as I want. Even though ski season now, I still get outside a lot. But yeah, I'm up for it. What are the goals? Like, what are the rules here?
I don't know. I mean, I'd say definitely lose some body fat, and it is true. I want to just kind of go back to what you just said, which is winter time. I think it is natural to pack on some weight because your body is using fat as an insulator as well. So I think that's a kind of evolutionary thing as well, where we typically, just like almost like bears, we fatten up. We don't hibernate, but we want to fatten up a little bit to insulate and protect our cells in the body. So it's kind of a natural thing, and I typically go through that every year where I just pack on some pounds for the winter, and then it just kind of shedded for the spring and summer. And I think a lot of people are going through that. The one thing I want to say is that when I was doing carnivore, I wasn't gaining as much, because then you still have that very leveled supply of energy, so you don't feel like you need to kind of get those carbs.
You get that satiation. That's what I really like about it too. Like, if you really want to tap me, don't give me donuts. Like, put a steak in front of me, and I'm like, well, this isn't really the time I'm usually eating, but maybe I want this.
Yeah, right. So the goals would be, I guess, just lean up a little bit and share our experiences, what we do, some of the tips and tricks. One of the things that I used to do in the past, I don't do it as much right now, but I might start again a little bit, at least for like the 1 or 2 weeks, is I drink carbonated water, just like seltzer water. And the reason behind that is that I feel like the CO2, it just fills my stomach, it fills my belly, it makes me feel instantaneously full. And so if I do have a craving, that's kind of like my go-to remedy. I'll drink a little bit, and then I just feel full, and then that craving goes away. So that's kind of like one of the tips.
Yeah, I just I guess I've never really been a big fan of carbonated beverages in general. Just the ginger ale, maybe a Sprite once in a while, but I'd rather just have water. So talk about the mineral water that you get. Where do you get that? How does that differ from regular tap water or filtered water?
So mineral water. So I typically just buy like seltzer, I think, and but there was a brand that had gosh, I forget the name of the brand, but it had electrolytes added to it, and minerals, so that it felt actually, I think it was Simply True or something like that. It was the brand of the water, and actually had a really good taste. And your body tells you that's one of the mechanisms, right? When you drink something, your body's telling you like, oh, I like that. And sometimes it's for good, and sometimes it's from
the mountain or something, right?
Right. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, because you eat a donut, and body's like, oh yeah, sugar and fat, awesome, bring it on. But that water was it just had a good taste. It had, I think, enough of those electrolytes and minerals that just felt satiated. It kind of like gave you that feeling of satiation without any carbonation.
Yeah, I actually bought these. I think they're called trace mineral drops, and you can put them in your filtered water, and it kind of adds that minerals that you'd normally get kind of in the wild back to our ancestor thing, right? Like we're filtering our water so much that we're missing out on some of these minerals that we
Right.
used to get.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather err on the side of over filtering water and then adding more than
Yeah.
just than depending on minerals that come in my tap water.
Right, yeah. There's a whole other podcast about fluoride and all the chlorine and all the other stuff that's in our water, right?
Right, right. So I'd rather like uh, filter it, reverse osmosis, and then if I need to add any minerals or electrolytes, that's easy way to do it. And so that makes me think also about when you do a water fast. When I do a water fast for let's say 5 days or 7 days, two things that I want to share on this in this episode is I'm trying to ramp up. I'm trying to deplete carbs, so like eat fewer carbs for the couple weeks prior of doing the water fast. And some people call it fat adaptation, where your body's already getting used to protein and fat as the main source of energy, so that when you do water fast, when you stop eating, your body is already like, oh, okay, I need to tap into fat because we were eating some of that for the past couple of weeks and not carbs. So the transition while you deplete the carbs, the glycogen in your body, and day three is typically the most difficult one, because that's when you don't have any glycogen anymore, and your body is like super hungry. It wants to jump on anything that's sugary and carbs as carbs. But if you do this fat adaptation, meaning that your body is used to using fat as energy source, that transition on day three is much easier. And in the past, when I did like water fast for a week, first time, day three was just brutal on me. They call it keto flu, because your body is just pulling out all the stops. It just wants you to eat carbs.
It's like in
period.
survival mode,
Yes,
right?
it just
Thinks you're
says
gonna
like,
die.
hey, dude, you need to eat some carbs now, because the brain is like, you're like, yeah, you don't want to be in the same you don't want to be in the same room with your spouse. 'Cause that might lead to some conflicts. Yeah, but if you do that fat adaptation for a couple of weeks prior to doing that water fast, the transition that I found was much easier on me. But that also brings me back to what we were just talking about, which is electrolytes and minerals. And when you do water fast, which is you just drink water, you want to replete your electrolytes. So you want to add some salts. You want to add, cream of tartar gives you some minerals and elements that you need. Your table salt, or like better like pink salt, which has other
Into your water. So
into
you
your
put this in your
water.
water.
Yeah. So I typically I mix a little bit of cream of tartar and sea salt, pink sea salt, and sometimes just squeeze of lemon just to give it a taste. And then those are my electrolytes, and
Yeah,
that
I
helps
actually.
me. That helps me. Almost immediately. You feel your body's like, oh, I need those. Bring it
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I need to get some more tips from you. So, I don't really like the taste of salt water.
Mm,
So I've actually bought those little pills that are just like Himalayan salt, and
right.
so I take one of those like every day just
Yeah,
to kind of
I
help.
think that's why the little recipe that I was recommended had like a squeeze of lemon juice. Gives you vitamin C as well, which is always good to have. But also it just makes that whole thing like more palatable.
Yeah,
And I warm it up, so it's nice, kind of like warm beverage
yeah, and you can
too.
do this with your herbal tea as well. I'm sure. Yeah,
Correct. So, and then past day three, it's just easy peasy at that point. It's just gravy train. You're rolling. Your body's like, I don't need anything else. It's amazing how when that transition happens, you're almost amazed. Like, whoa, you don't want any. No, the body's like, I'm good to go. We got plenty to work with over here from your
yeah.
from your belt area. And then you just go on and just replete your water. I drink about a gallon of water a day,
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
and I love it. First thing in the morning,
Big glass.
big
Yeah,
glass, 16 ounces, just right down the hatch.
cool. Yeah, listen, viewers. This is the real way to six pack abs right here.
Yeah, we all have six pack abs. They're just hidden.
Yeah, it's just getting that body fat out
Right.
there, right? Yeah.
So one of my goals is just to get into better shape. Working out during fasting is a for some it works, for some it doesn't. Definitely the same intensity is probably not going to happen when you're fasting. But the focus that you get, the mind benefits of like just being super focused are just amazing. So I'm actually looking forward to doing it.
Yeah, I've done a couple of the 36-hour fasts, and it varies, I guess, with my workout. So if I do a workout kind of at the 20-hour mark, which is kind of usually where I'm at, some days I'll be like, yeah, I'm not even hungry afterwards, and then I'll just go to sleep, and then I'll be really hungry in the morning, right? But that's a 36-hour fast. But sometimes it's like I'll work out, and I don't know if it's just a more intense workout, and I'll be like, man, I really have to eat tonight, otherwise I'm going to be waking up at 1 in the morning starving. So
I
it
literally,
just kind of varies.
I think it was several times when I actually literally forgot that I needed to eat.
Yeah.
And this was I wasn't even fasting. It was just like intermittent fast and just one meal a day, and I was just like already late. I was like, I don't really feel hungry.
Right.
I'm just gonna go to sleep. and so, and then another day I was like, did I eat yesterday? I don't remember. So when your body just kind of adapts to it, it is a natural course of things, like of how our body are coping. It's only when we've trained a body that you
Yeah.
are going to be getting this much food every day.
Yeah, a lot of the hunger that we think we experience is really just timed, right? So there's been experiments on this about salivating dogs and the bell and all that stuff. Like we've trained our bodies to eat at certain times during the day that even when we're not hungry, we feel like we're hungry. And so if we can just push that pack that, Jason Fung says, if you're in the middle of something important at work, and you're working through the lunch hour, like you don't even realize it because you're busy.
Right. Right. Yeah, we are our own worst Pavlov's dogs, like with this conditioning that you need to have these many meals and then your body expects it. And so you don't even allow an idea that you don't have to eat that many into your brain because you've been just so conditioned that you need to like, I have friends, they're like, oh, I got to eat something. I haven't eaten in 2 hours. I'm like, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You're not going to die. But it's their bodies, I sort of tongue in cheek, but it's like their bodies are just so accustomed to it that they really think that they are going to die or something bad is going to happen because their bodies are sending them those signals. Like I don't feel that, but they do.
Right.
So I kind of sympathize and I empathize with their feelings because their bodies are really sending those signals to them. They're like, hey, look. You like your hands will start shaking if I'm going to make your hands shake if you're not going to eat something sugary or something
time.
or some kind of a snack. So it is as much as conditioning of what you eat, but also conditioning when you eat it that you need to so it's a mind thing as well. You have to conscientiously be like, I need to change what I eat, but also like how I think about eating.
Yeah, and we associate food with different things, right? You think about going to the movie theater, and you got the popcorn and the M&Ms and the soda and whatever. So, my kids are still into that, and we've really, really reduced that. Where every time we go out to eat now, we're just like we're having water, and they kind of expect that now. They don't even ask for a drink or anything. So that's kind of cool. We can talk about kids and getting them, make healthier choices a little bit.
That would be a great podcast. We can trade some notes of some of the things that we do. You have kids, I have a kid, and I'm trying to change her eating habits. It's super important because that's what we're instilling in them right now, what they eat. And if you make those habits, if you form those bad habits early in life, they persist. And then it's more difficult to kind of expunge them later on.
For sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So 3-week challenge.
3 weeks.
Let's call it 3 weeks. We're going to call it, Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day for your wife.
Get those 6-pack abs.
Yeah, get those 6-pack abs. Get at least like some kind of a shadow over here that indicates that they are still there. Yeah. And then we're going to be sharing some tips and tricks and how do we cope with this and also work out. How is that impacting our workouts? And then,
so when do you know? Just one more question. So when do you know? How can you tell when your body's ready to end the fast? Is there like a signal you usually get, or explain to our viewers about that?
I think that when you're getting close to to me, it's like multiple phases that your body is going through. initially when you start the fast, your body is telling like day 3, it will just like, you need to start eating something or I'm going to give you a headache.
Yeah.
And then if you're not adapted with that fat adaptation, when you're not adapted for like getting energy out of fat sources, you're going to get this what they call like keto flu, which is like you feel like literally as if you would have a flu. You have it feels like you got temperature. It feels like you have fever. That is, it feels like foggy brain, like a headache, all those like literally flu symptoms, and that's your body trying to literally coerce you to getting something carbs into your system, get that quick access energy. That's sort of like phase 1. On the tail end, if you have an extended fast and you are depleting your fat, your body's happy and okay with that. But then there comes a point where your body is going to reach low level of fat in your body as well, and that's when you may enter like starvation, which is nothing that you want to do. That's not what we want to do, right? We want to starve ourselves, because after you deplete your fat reserves, then your body's going to have to go to the next thing, which is going to be muscle tissue, and you don't want to be losing muscles.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that most of us are nowhere near that level. That's like 6 to 8% body fat.
Oh, yeah.
Some are elite athletes aren't even
correct
close to that. So.
And then you have to factor in what kind of exertion, what is your lifestyle. Do you work out a lot, or do you have a job that is physical, and that's going to be impacting you as well. But if you have like an office job where you don't do a lot of physical stuff, then your body's going to be signaling you differently when you are working physically. So for me, my body, I think it's the longest that I went was 2 weeks, and I literally could have gone for like another week. I think it was just friends and people around me, or like, "Are you okay? You're gonna die."
That's my worst thing with fasting, is that I come home and my kids are eating and my wife's eating, and I'm like, I'm not really hungry, but this looks pretty good.
Right, and it's food is like social thing that we do, and but yeah, so I could have gone for longer. So I didn't get to the point where my body was like, all right, you're starving yourself right now, so cut it out, exit the fast. So it was more of a social pressure, like your cheeks are caving in.
Yeah,
you're looking, and it's I think it's a balance, and I kind of like what Dr. Pompa is saying on that. Like you can do like 5 to 7 day fast once a month. You're gonna save yourself some pretty money that you can then spend on better quality foods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a nice benefit. But also the thing that he was talking about is the autophagy and the stem cells. So there is a peak to that. So apparently like day 4 and 5 is where you have peak production of stem cells in your body. So it doesn't really pay off unless you're just going for the weight loss. It doesn't really pay off that much more to extend that fast for longer than like 5 or 6 or 7. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do like a 5-day water fast. And so I never really my body never was, okay, we need to end it, because you're just not feeling, or we're like starving ourselves.
So how do you transition back once your body's used
Thank
to
you.
not
That's
eating?
An excellent question. The mistake that I did when I did water fasting first time is like when I'm like, okay, I did 5 days. Let me just, start eating. So I'm just like, all right, well, I built up, I lost a ton of weight. So I have this credit, right? I have this credit line. So I'm just going to binge and eat whatever I want. And that was a mistake. I was hurting like a puppy, because what happens is your digestive system is shutting down because you're not eating. So there's no need to run anything over here. And so when you suddenly like dump a truckload of food at it, it's like your body's like, whoa, wait a second, we need to start the furnace to get things going and start burning this. So literally you are just you fill your belly with food and you're not digesting it yet, and so like you're going to be in pain,
be bloated, and
you're going to bloated, and or just like in pain because you're like nothing is moving because you're just restarting the machinery. So so what I do right now, I follow several tips. One of them, again, from Dr. Pompa. He says, like, start with just some broth, bone broth. So your body slowly, and just like maybe a couple hundred calories, maybe like, 200-300 calories, and just slowly ramp it up.
So just add some butter or
Yeah, some
maybe
some
some avocado
some
or something.
some fats, or even like bone broth with bone marrow has lots of
Okay,
fat, so
yeah.
that's a good source. You kind of like lets you like slowly ramp it up. The next day, just increase it, and then by the third day, you're good to go. You can eat meat and things like that. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on your system. So again, I always advise people to kind of experiment on themselves. That's your own body.
Right.
It is different for everyone. So any kind of variations, you can kind of tweak that. But for me, it's typically 2 or 3 days to kind of slowly ramp out. And then you don't have that urge to like binge eat anything as well, because your body is getting some nutrients. However, you will be progressively more hungry, because when your body's like, oh, okay, we're doing food now. So,
Bring it on.
so I want more. So
Yeah.
that's the exit. So that's something that I would advise people that are doing that to slowly exit. Yeah.
It's good advice.
hmm
Okay.
So
All right.
so we're set for that challenge.
The challenge. Yeah.
And what are we going to talk about next time? Let's give our audience some. So we mentioned food for kids and what can be done
Yeah,
in
that'd
that
be a good one.
space.
Yeah,
I think that would be great.
that can be so tough because you got all these guidelines in the school system. You got your kids going over to friends' houses, and so you
Right.
can only control so much, right?
That's true. That's true. And then even changing those habits that they have, because they're like, I want,
Mhm.
and they're just in one mode of like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna just throw a
Throw a
tantrum.
tantrum. Yeah.
So that, and then just the updates on how we're doing.
Yep. Sounds good.
We'll see if the camera is gonna show how much we changed over 3 weeks. If we're gonna kind of shade a couple of pounds, 10, 15 maybe, who knows.
Yeah.
And so I think that would be a good, so kind of sharing those tips, how we're doing. And I don't know, anything else that comes up, I think, in terms of any research, maybe there's something new that we don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe we'll find something out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're both got that entrepreneurial spirit, so maybe we talk about some of the things we might be looking forward to in the future, and yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. We didn't even talk about your, fasting entrepreneur domain and blog that you want to start or started.
Yeah. Yeah, so do you want to talk about it now, or you want to save it for next time?
I don't
Or
know.
just do a teaser.
It's up to you. Just the
Yeah,
teaser, then we
so,
can talk about it next time.
So yeah, I have a website, fastingentrepreneur.com, and yeah, I mainly wrote it as a blog to start, just kind of documenting my journey and the things that I've learned, and I'm going to add some resources up there, some of the key books that I've really enjoyed. So if you're interested, go to fastingentrepreneur.com. I also got the domain fastingtycoon.com, which is my Twitter name, so that's a little easier to type in the browser. It goes to the same website. But yeah, if you want to learn about my journey, learn about some of the resources out there, some of the doctors that have really done some amazing work in this field.
That'd be great to kind of
what I
have
was
a
for.
good place to go, and having those resources. You read 30 books. It's almost like you could write your own book right now just based on
Oh, my
that and an
goodness,
experience.
yeah. That's something I'd love to do, actually, is write a book. And
Mhm.
I actually gave one of my coworkers, he was asking about what recipes I'd used for my weight loss, and I had actually documented everything from a daily standpoint. I've taken pictures of all the meals, and I'd written down my weight and kind of what I ate for the day. And he looked at those and he's like, "Man, these recipes are great. Like, you should make a cookbook out of this." And I was like, "That's not a bad idea. I've already got everything written down.
Right,
I just
right.
have to compile it, and it'd be pretty simple because you started out with spinach salads and some toppings on it, and now it's more, steak and eggs with some cheese and
Right.
stuff." But
Well, there's never been a better time to publish, even self-publish a book, and a lot of authors that we have as guests over here go through the whole process, either like publishing with a publisher or doing self-published book on Amazon, and so I'm always asking them how their experience was doing one or the other, and which
Yeah.
publisher and all that, so we can talk about that.
yeah, we can talk that offline. If I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
some
But I
questions.
definitely encourage you. Did you find one of the last questions for me? Did you find that when you were doing a blog, as you were doing, whether fasting or intermittent fasting or changing your diets, was typing it out like what you've done? Was that beneficial for you, or was it just like a chore, like I got to type something up, or? How did you
So I'll
feel
say,
about that?
so I first most of my stuff was kind of a personal Evernote type notebook. So it would be a quick, this is what I ate, this is kind of how I felt. So it'd be like a few
Journal,
sentences.
almost like a
Yeah,
journal.
it was a journal. It was an online journal with pictures and things. I've only got a couple of blog posts up right now, but yeah, that it's a little time consuming to do that stuff, and that's why I've kind of been behind. And I've got a lot of entrepreneurial ideas, but it seems like I focus more on my family now. It's like I didn't really have a dad growing up, and I wanted to be there for my kids all the time. So I have this balancing act. I want to have all these great ideas. I want to go to the cookbook, and I'd love to create a bathhouse. That was one of the things that
That's going to be another
that I
topic.
loved in Japan that we don't really have out here is a bathhouse. We've got the spas that are expensive. Bathhouses in Japan were like $3, right? So if we could do something
Part of the
along
culture.
those lines for the middle class, not for the $60 to $100 day
Right.
thing. So
I think we've shared a bunch of good teasers of future podcasts that we're
Yeah.
going to do together, and I'm really looking forward to that because there's just so much knowledge to be shared and helping people based on our experiences, and that's what this show is all
that's
about.
what it's
right?
all about.
It's all about
Just helping
listening,
people, yeah.
learning, and sharing with others. So with
I love
that, we're gonna segue out, and so thank you for listening. Mike Blasi, today's guest, and we talked about a bunch of things that hopefully will change a perspective maybe for you, or maybe just open up a new set of ideas, or maybe even help you on a journey that you are going through right now. And that's kind of the hope of this podcast and on this show, to listen to people that had some experiences that worked, and to share with others. So if you found this interesting and helpful, please share it with others. Check out our website, apodcast.com. Check us on the Facebook page that we set up. And until next time, roll the outro. The world is full of interesting people with wisdom and extraordinary experiences to learn from. Join me on a journey to discover them, speak with them, and learn from them. I'm Adrian Sinclair, host of A Podcast with Interesting People at apodcast.com.